You're listening to Podcast PXN,
a video game podcast
delivering player experience news.
Let's go!
Bang, bang, bang. Court is now in session, and welcome to Podcast PXN, episode 197. I am one of your hosts, the perennial dating app swiper from Portland, Oregon, Christian Macias. Make some noise for me, everyone.
Woo, woo. Oh.
And I'm joined over Discord by Kentucky's #1 Spartan, PXN founder, Daniel Prindle, aka Dan is DTM.
Yo. Is it bad when you said bang, bang, bang? I thought you were shooting us because we're in the U.S.
Oh, just because I'm American doesn't mean I'm doing that. And the president of the Tifa Lockhart fan club. He is a Nintendo aficionado and artist extraordinaire at Roro.
Guilty.
As charged.
As charged. We're in court.
Oh, hey, nice type back to yeah, nice, dude. Smart one. Gage, not here. He's working hard, or is he hardly working? We don't know. We can say whatever we want. He's not here. Maybe he'll be back next week. Who knows? However, thank you to everyone watching us live and participating in the chat. Just as a reminder, we are live each and every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern over on youtube.com/@podcastpxn. And you can find us simultaneously streaming as well on twitch.tv/podcastpxn. Topic of the show this week is Courtroom Bombshells. We're going inside the FTC versus Microsoft trial and giving you all the information. But first, the show always starts with quick bites. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, originally, real quick, I told the crew we're doing no quick bites today. Absolutely zero of them. But then I realized that no news. Then I realized that in our description for the show, it says that it always starts with the quick bites. So we have to have some quick bites. We have to. I put 3 of them in here. First off, Hello Kitty Island Adventure is coming to Apple Arcade July 28th. Who are we playing as, Ro? Pom Pom Purin? Kuroki?
I would love to play
Kuromi?
as my Melody. Or Kurumi. Yes, either one.
Mm-hmm.
I think you make your own character, though, which is cool. I like that. That's neat.
That could be neat, yeah. Dan, who are you playing as in Hello Kitty Island Adventure?
One of the kitties. I don't know, but no. What? There's actually a funny thing here. Have they ever named a game Hello Kitty Island Adventure before?
I don't know, maybe.
I don't know.
Because
have they?
I don't think so. Which makes me even more weirded out because literally, you guys are going to think this is stupid, but me and my friend, as like growing up, we would always say we're going home to go play Hello Kitty Island Adventure 2.
Huh.
Like literally.
They never made the first one.
We would always just joke because we just came up with a random name. And I'm like, what the fuck? Is somebody here? Like, is there microphones? You know?
Somebody heard you.
But
I heard you all those years back, and they're like, you know what? That's a pretty good idea.
Yeah,
for real. I just found a new game also available on the App Store. It's called Hello Kitty Nail Salon. It's got a 4.5 average on the App Store. So if you're interested,
it's pretty good. Pretty good.
Real talk. I don't know if I'll touch this, but Hello Kitty meets Animal Crossing.
Yes.
Could be in. I'm insane enough.
I think I will be playing. I literally tweeted today that I don't think mobile games are my jam, but I also said I will be playing Hello Kitty Animal Crossing game exclusively for iOS on July 28, 2023.
Oh, you have an iPhone?
I do, yes.
Gang.
Yes.
Gage?
Mm-mm. Gage definitely playing this for sure.
Yeah.
He'll find a way.
Next quick bite. Among Us, the animated series is in the works at CBS from Infinity Train creator Owen Davis. Wow. Yeah. Sus? Anyone?
Very sus. I don't know what this is going to be about, but the Infinity Train is definitely underrated. Great show. So it's cool that they got that guy to work on it. So that gives me a little bit of faith.
Ro, this is just a total aside. Have you seen Over the Garden Wall?
Yes, I have.
What a show. What a
show. Great show. Great show.
Yeah. Fuck you, Dan.
Sure. Yeah. Great show.
Sure.
Yeah. Really good.
Last quick bite here. Eat it, Oppenheimer fans. Xbox is getting a Barbie themed console. I think it's an Xbox Series S, as well as a whole suite of controllers, 5 of them, various Barbie themes. Us Barbie fans living it up.
Those are intense controllers.
Yeah. And how does PlayStation respond with the LeBron James DualSense?
Wow.
Nowhere near as exciting as a Barbie collaboration.
Xbox knows their audience.
Yeah. There's also, just off the top of my dome, there is a whatchamacallit. What do you call those things where you sign up for free to get it? A giveaway. There's a giveaway right now that you can win an Xbox themed Elden Ring controller.
Oh, I haven't
Go
seen
ahead.
those.
Sign up.
Very cool.
That's
That's it.
what it looks like.
That's it for all our quick bites. Because we have a lot of news to cover in our actual topic of the show. But first, we're going to check fantasy draft. Did we have any pickups this week? Yes, we did, because I put a lot of money in a lot of games. You want me to go through those? Can we go through those?
Please.
Want to see the league history?
Christian, I just want to tell you, I had one of these games. I had an amount put into a bid the night that we were podcasting, and I forgot to hit submit. So
Oh, no.
more power to you that you got it. But
Incredible.
yeah, incredible.
Bro, now this is coming. I went to check the league history. It looks like you didn't pick up Cookie Cutter until the 17th, or was it just like a weird thing? Because I thought you had picked it up like 2 weeks ago. Cookie Cutter.
I picked it up the Saturday before last week's episode,
Mhm.
I think.
Yes.
Okay. Because it's
Don't
all
know what
coming
day that
through as
was.
June 17th. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. June 24th is what I should be looking at, not the 17th.
Right.
Yeah.
My apologies. Well, no, hold on. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it
we
does. Okay.
we covered
Okay.
the 17th.
Here we go. So on the 24th, Salava Gang PDX did 5 transactions. That's all me. I picked up a counter pick. I counter picked replaced. And now, do I think that game's going to be good? Yes. But do I think it's coming out in 2023? I haven't seen it anywhere. Now, it could come just kind of shadow drop towards the end of the year, but I'm hoping it doesn't. And if it does, maybe I can just drop it, you know?
Right.
That's fair.
I picked up Bomb Rush Cyberpunk for $4. That's coming out pretty soon. Indie game. Hopefully gets me some points. I also picked up Liza P. Do I love Liza P? Absolutely not. You know, I was kind of hating on it when I talked about it. But enough journalists are enjoying Liza P. And from based on their impressions, you know what? This could give me some points. Even if it's not a bunch, it could give me some. That's all I'm hoping for. Pikmin 4 got announced. It's coming this year. I picked it up. Why not? My biggest pickup was Super Mario Bros. Wonder for a bid of $15.
Good pick. Good
Yeah.
pick.
That's a good pick.
I think Dan, you were competing for that one too?
Yeah, that's the one I was gonna bid on. I don't think I put $15 though, to be honest. So you would have won it anyways. But yes, I was gonna bid on it and I forgot. I forgot to.
So that
needed
means RPG is still up for grabs then.
Yes, true.
It's not.
Oh, okay. Never
That's
mind.
a remake. And
Oh,
Mhm.
it's not much. Oh, darn it.
Are you
it's
sure?
not a total.
Not a remake.
Mhm.
It's not a Resident
partial
Evil
remake.
situation.
Are you
Gotcha.
sure? Are you
correct.
sure? You're sure?
Absolutely.
Because it's in our game list.
Go
Uh-oh.
ahead and look. Go ahead and look.
It says
I dare you.
it says available.
It shouldn't be.
It does. It says available. Super
I see.
Mario.
That's so dumb if it is. There's no changes.
It says available.
It does
know
say
of.
available.
Yeah.
Oh, Lost Signals is next month.
Christian's look on his face.
Oh, it's a
All right.
Okay.
All right. I'm pretty sure it won't let you when you actually try to make a bid though, because I thought I tried to do that and it wouldn't let me. So
Oh, okay. I'm sure no one here has already made a bid for it.
we'll see.
We'll see.
Let's move on then because we have to make room for tots because it's a lot of stuff. What you got for me, Daniel?
Yes. What do I have for you? I have more Halo Infinite Season 4. Been playing a ton of Infection. Played with somebody new, actually. This is a great story because literally I had zero communication with this person. We were playing Infection and we were camping in the same spot. Of course, Infection, you want to camp in a spot to keep killing the zombies coming at you. And me and this dude camp in the same spot. We're like crouching like you're teabagging
Wow.
with each other.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Like you're doing the crouching like repeatedly, like to say, "What's up, bro?" And yeah, we had a great time. We've literally played a shitload of Infection, and yeah, I'm having my best time with it. I love Infection so much. So, also continued more Tears of the Kingdom, but yeah, that game still bangs. Still trying to get through it.
Someday.
Bro?
Yes, I've also been playing a little bit of Tears of the Kingdom on the side, doing little side quests here and there, adventuring through Hyrule. I picked up, well, I had this game, but I just didn't play a lot of it until recently. Dragon Ball Fighter Z, really fun game. Enjoying that. Still want to get Street Fighter, but I just can't do the $80 purchase right now. But I'm waiting soon. $90 actually. But yeah, it's a good time. Good time. Tears of the Kingdom and Dragon Ball Fighter Z, both great games. But that's about it. That's it. No new games.
No new games. I put out a tweet Monday night. I guess it would have been Tuesday morning, 2 a.m. Western time, that I had finally sunset my time with Tears of the Kingdom after over 115 hours. Completed all shrines, completed all main quests.
Did you say I 150 or 115?
115.
Okay.
So yeah, 115 or more. You know, for whatever reason, Switch does it in 5-hour increments. It's not precise. So
Gotcha.
At least 115 hours in Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah. And I went on backlog that night, and I was like, "Here's my little review." And it's not just one of the greatest games ever made, but one of the most beautiful. I remember the opening like 20 hours or so coming on this podcast and being like, "Man, this game made me cry 3 times." Well, the final 20 hours did the exact same thing, where I did tear up a lot. What an ending, I'll say. What a climax this game had. And I saved some clips, and I was watching videos of it on my Switch before the show started, being like, man, what an experience this game was. And I felt really lucky to be able to play a game like this. And I remember watching the credits roll that night and thinking, I don't know if I appreciated this game enough. And that's after 115 hours. It still felt like I don't know if I appreciated everything this game was doing enough. Because there's still so much in the world for me to explore and see. And yeah, I think for all the criticisms I had, rightfully so, for Breath of the Wild, like Tears of the Kingdom just squash them, expand on them. This phenomenal game, top to bottom. Game of the year? Question mark? I don't know. We'll see, because I also started playing Final Fantasy 16. So easy to just start up the game and be like, hey, there's a demo saved file found. You want to transfer it? You hit yes. Like, okay, you can just hit continue now. And yeah. Great game as well, but I'm still so early on that I don't have any actual thoughts other than that combat, man. That combat really makes my head go burr. Anytime I do a perfect dodge and it doesn't do slow-mo for a second, but like if you attack after perfect dodge, then it does like a little slow-mo effect. It gets me every single time. What a cool game.
Yeah. So I want to play that too. So many great games coming out.
Spend the $90 Canadian on it.
Jesus. Canada, why?
Okay, this is going to sound silly, but yesterday when I booted up Final Fantasy, after I'd officially bought it, I was just sitting in the main menu listening to the music, just dancing.
Just popping.
Every aspect of that game. Great.
Oh, man. Speaking of music, the music in the end of Tears of the Kingdom, so good. God.
Dude, there are so many songs at the end where they're doing renditions of like old Zelda songs, like
Zelda's lullabies, like incorporated with like other stuff.
Dude,
so good.
Yeah,
so good.
What? Excuse me?
So good, Dad. So good.
I'm I'm gonna say this: that ending was like extremely like anime, like
Yes, in the best way.
shonen
Not
level.
none that
Yeah.
none of the ways that Dan and Gage me like roll their eyes at it is like really good, real good anime.
Mm.
Good anime. Yeah.
I don't like to use the word hype a lot, but there's like 2 moments where I yelled, "Oh my god!" and it's like 1 a.m. in my house. It's like fuck, it's so good, dude.
Incredible.
Damn.
Boss fight though.
Yeah, that boss fight though. All right, let's go on to the topic of the show.
Really?
Yes.
You fight.
Topic of the show.
Sorry.
What?
I
You
was
fight
gonna say,
single. I mean,
you-
sorry, no.
you
spoiler,
fight you fight your fairy from Ocarina of Time.
Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty obvious who you fight, but still,
Right.
It's yeah. Anyway, topic of the show this week are courtroom bombshells. Little did we know how many headlines this little trial, this little FTC v Microsoft would come out. There's still more ongoing. This is an ongoing case. There'll be more stories tomorrow, but as of now, we have 4 days of insane news to disseminate for you today. I think on our document, it's like 5 pages of notes. So I'm going to do my best. I went through the Verge's they have a daily breakdown. Tom Warren putting out a lot of updates. I did my best to cover most of the major stuff. There's some smaller stuff about NVIDIA that I'm kind of going to glaze over. But these are all the ones that you're seeing kind of happen on, people talking about it on Twitter and such. So we're going to start in chronological order. But if there's other stuff that we need to bring in for conversation, we can go ahead and do so as well. June 22nd, the trial starts with opening statements. And already we have just like insane stuff off the bat. Microsoft is saying that Xbox has lost the console wars. They're positioning themselves to be like, hey, we are in 3rd place. This is why this kind of acquisition. Oh yeah, by the way, this whole trial is basically for the FTC being like, Microsoft cannot acquire Activision Blizzard. And of course, that deal is supposed to go through sometime next month in July. Otherwise, if they don't, they either have to renegotiate a deal or pay $3 billion in breakup fees, which would be huge for Activision anyway. They'll still win a lot of money. Would not be obviously good for Microsoft. They'd lose a lot. Okay, anyway. Xbox has lost the console wars, says Microsoft. Xbox has lost console wars, and its rivals are positioned to continue to dominate, argues Microsoft in a filing today. It also reveals Xbox had 16% share of console sales in 2021 and 21% of console install base. Xbox's console has consistently ranked 3rd behind PlayStation and Nintendo in sales. This is also interesting because you'll hear even day 4 of the trial that Nintendo isn't necessarily a competitor, and yet it kind of is in this regard, isn't it?
Yeah, when it comes everybody's technically competing for space in the console ecosystem, I guess, for lack of a better term. But yeah, that's crazy that I understand why they would come out and say that. It makes it a better case for them to acquire Activision, to say that they're losing this console war, but it's crazy just to hear them say it. It's just it's interesting.
The other oh, sorry. Were you so
No, I'm just saying.
Oh, okay. All right.
No.
The interesting thing to me is like that we've known for a while that they lost the console wars. Like ever since they started this strategy of releasing on PC and Game Pass, like their strategy hasn't been hardware for the most part. It's been Game Pass. Like they don't really care if you own a console per se, because the margins on your console are pretty much nothing compared to the margins on a game that you're physically buying. So like I do agree to a certain extent of what they're saying, that they've lost the console war, because literally the console itself, I don't think they care about winning that. They just want get people on board with their ecosystem, I guess.
Yeah, and you're right, because there will be plenty of more articles where we kind of touch on the concept of ecosystem down the line, specifically with Game Pass and what that means and what other acquisitions, but we'll get to that in a second. Another little tidbit here, the FTC was pushing an argument that ZeniMax exclusivity would also mean Activision games would shift to Microsoft exclusives, and they were bringing in a lot of examples. One of them was the Elder Scrolls 6, with Phil Spencer saying that it's still at least 5 years away, and that platforms are still up in the air. So no decision has been necessarily made about the Elder Scrolls 6, though it's probably likely that it may become an exclusive. Another title mentioned was Outer Worlds 2, with Matt Booty saying a decision has not been made yet either. So again, it likely could be an exclusive there as well.
Which there's no way that they don't know if Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be exclusive or not. They're lying through their teeth on that one, because like they're not gonna have one of the most popular franchises and not know what they're gonna do with it. Like they know what they're gonna do with it. And I get Phil's point that they haven't really started deep development on it yet because they're making Starfield, but they have an idea. Yeah.
And do you think? Sorry,
bro.
Do you think that idea is it's exclusive? Because I feel if they knew it wasn't going to be exclusive, they would say that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think you're spot on.
And even if that was going to be the decision they make, I don't think they would say that now because they don't want to be in a position to show that, like, oh, we're buying these studios. And exactly.
And the same thing with Outer Worlds 2. If that was not exclusive, you would go ahead and just say that. Like, and that game's been in development. Yeah.
Matt Booty, head of Xbox Game Studios, was called as the first witness in this trial. A lot of articles here, a lot of news. We're just diving into these bullet points. Sony will not share PlayStation 6 information with Microsoft-owned Activision, and that makes sense because why would you give your dev kits to a direct competitor? The FTC versus Microsoft case kicks off today, and we're gradually hearing more about Sony's opposition to Microsoft's proposed ABK acquisition. In a deposition, PlayStation chief Jim Ryan says that Sony would no longer share confidential details about next-gen PlayStation consoles with Microsoft-owned Activision. Quote, "We simply could not run the risk of a company that was owned by a direct competitor having access to that info." There's another thing I want to tie in later, but that'll come up later in not consequential order, chronological order.
Kirik says, if it's 5 years out, that means it likely won't be on this console generation. Yeah, that's pretty true.
That's true. Yeah.
It could launch with the next console, given the timing. That would be about the right time.
If that were an exclusive game as a launch title, that would be huge. An Elder Scrolls game at launch for Xbox would be massive.
Yeah. And like, I don't fault Sony for not giving PS6 info to Activision if they're required, but like that does put them in an interesting position because Jim Ryan was afraid of them sabotaging Call of Duty on PlayStation, but if they don't give them details on what their next console is, they're essentially sabotaging that version of Call of Duty because they don't know what it's going to be.
And I'll pull something from a little bit later on. Essentially, that's already happened with with Minecraft. I think was the game mentioned where there is no PS5 version of Minecraft because PlayStation didn't want to give, I guess Microsoft access to PS5 dev kit, right? And so still to this day, there is no PS5 version of Minecraft. It's an optimized version now, but it's still the PS4 game, not a direct PS5 game.
Which I kind of feel like that's a half truth too, because at this point the consoles have been out for 3 years. So like at this point, Phil, if you were gonna do that, like I feel like they could have done it by now. So I do think that's a partial half truth. Like I agree with them. I don't think they did it initially because of that, but I mean now it's been 3 years since then. So,
but it does beg the question then: would new titles of Call of Duty then be an inferior product on PlayStation if there were this? Granted, it's Sony doing it themselves, but it makes sense why they wouldn't want to share dev kits with them. But yeah, it would lead to inferior products of Call of Duty on PlayStation hardware, which is interesting.
I wonder how
there's still so much more.
Run.
The Switch. Oh my God, I didn't include this in the article because I think it happened today. But Bobby Kotick was on the stand today, and he said that he found out about the Call of Duty coming to Switch in the news, that there was no prior agreement made with Microsoft at all about this, which
it's like, I guess we got to start developing that.
Well, did you see his other comment? His other comment was, he's like, yeah, even if this doesn't go through, I think we want to put this on the Switch moving
Oh.
forward. I'm like,
He's like, oh, maybe that's a good idea.
Yeah.
More money? Oh
Yeah.
shit. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Anyway. There's a lot of talks about cloud gaming. Of course, that's one of the reasons why I wasn't going through in the UK. Because of cloud gaming, with the UK calling it another market, and Sarah Bond calling it more of a feature now, not a separate market. Xbox Cloud Gaming is used mostly for trying games. Microsoft has admitted that most Xbox Cloud Gaming users rely on it to try games rather than stream regularly as a result of technical limitations. Microsoft is arguing against the FTC today that cloud gaming is merely an addition right now rather than its own market. This will be a key part of the FTC versus Microsoft case. So yeah, that's one of the most important things that they have to argue now if they want this whole case to go, if they want the acquisition to go through, is that they can't position themselves as cloud gaming as a separate market that they would be leaders in.
Even I guess so. I feel like they are, even though if it's not a big space right now, they're definitely leading that conversation. I feel like, as opposed to PlayStation and Xbox, it's like, obviously, but
Yeah.
I guess it is just I know what they have to do here, but I get kind of excited about that future. Like, they talked about mobile a little bit later, and I like to think about like the Bell or the Samsung TV things that they're doing, where you could just play the game on the and I think that could be a really cool thing to have in the future, where just like put the Xbox Game Pass game on the TV, have a controller, and just play it. But obviously, they're not talking about that here today. But I don't know, just. I think they're leading in that cloud stuff, but they don't want to make it seem that way.
I want to shift over into the next thing, which is probably one of the bigger bombshells, and this happened on day one. This whole conversation we've been having over the past year or so, longer than that, I think it's been, was about exclusivity with Call of Duty, right? With Jim Ryan not believing that COD would come to consoles. Turns out that was false. Pretty much right from the beginning, Jim Ryan was having conversations and emails with both Activision and with Phil, and Jim Ryan himself pretty much admitting that the Activision deal wasn't about these exclusivities. So Sony's PlayStation chief, Jim Ryan, believed that Microsoft's proposed acquisition of ABK wasn't about locking games as Xbox exclusives, according to the newly unsealed email. It is not an exclusivity play at all, said Ryan. They're thinking bigger than that, and they have the cash to make moves like this. I've spent a fair amount of time with both Phil Spencer and Bobby Kotick over the past day, and I'm pretty sure we will continue to see Call of Duty on PlayStation for many years to come. That admittance happened long, long ago, and then Jim Ryan in public pretty much, arguing the other way. I don't know, top level thoughts there, I guess.
I mean, it's Jim Ryan, so I can't be surprised that he says one thing and another thing comes out. But I agree with him. It has never made sense that Call of Duty would be an exclusive, because it just makes too much money on PlayStation.
Yes.
PlayStation is the number one platform for Call of Duty. It doesn't make sense for Microsoft to make it exclusive.
Yeah, it's funny that Microsoft is like trying to tell everybody that we're not going to do this, and Jim Ryan is saying no, they are going to do this, and even Jim himself is saying no, they're not actually going to do this in private emails in PlayStation. But
the thing about this too, I'm going to jump a little bit forward. I found it here. I'm going to highlight it for myself. The thing about this is, when I read this, I was like, what an extremely, it's business, I get it, you don't want the merger to go through, but it still feels scummy to hear one thing and then read another all this time. And then it turns out it got scummier. Activision forced Microsoft into a new Call of Duty revenue deal. I found out about how revenue deals work this week, basically, with publishers doing a 70-30 split, while Activision does 80-20. Sarah Bond is detailing how Microsoft had to agree to a new rev share deal with Activision to get Call of Duty on the Xbox Series S and X consoles. Activision refused to agree to prepare its Xbox dev kit work and hinted that it had different revenue share with PlayStation. According to Bond, Bobby made it clear, if we did not move beyond standard revenue share, that he intended to not place Call of Duty on Xbox. Activision, Bobby Kotick wanted Microsoft to agree to a new rev share deal before work began on COD for the Xbox consoles. Quote, it was clear that Call of Duty would be on PS5, and that would not have been good if it was not also on Xbox, if it was launching at the same time, says Bond. Activision also asked Microsoft if it wanted to bid on marketing deals for COD, but it declined. That ultimately meant Microsoft couldn't show Call of Duty in its Xbox showcase. Ultimately, Bond said that Xbox decided to meet Activision Blizzard's demands to go from 70-30 to 80-20. And then time was limited. We had players whose expectations we wanted to meet, so we ultimately made a decision that it was the best thing for the business. Bobby Kotick strong-arming Microsoft into a completely new revenue share deal and threatening to not put Call of Duty on Xbox consoles at all.
Which
What?
I believe there was more info, unless this was conjecture by people. I believe there was more info that said that Sony had offered a large amount of money to Activision to make Call of Duty exclusive, and Activision went to Microsoft and said, they're offering us this. You guys got to change your revenue split if you want us to continue to have Xbox or Call of Duty on Xbox, or else we're taking this deal and it's going to be a PlayStation exclusive. So yeah,
wow. That's slightly less worse though, isn't it? Because they got offered something at least in that situation. It's not them just being an asshole and saying like, raise your.
I didn't see that in the Verge article, but yeah, that's my fault if it was somewhere else and I missed it. I didn't hear. I mean, I'm hearing this now.
Yeah,
that's crazy. That's crazy though. Like, I guess, like you were saying, Christian, how Bobby Kotick is strong arming Microsoft. If you're competing with PlayStation, which I guess they aren't now, or no, not Nintendo's the one that they're not competing with. But if you're trying to compete with PlayStation, and you don't have Call of Duty, that like, and I think Activision knows that they're like, if you don't have Call of Duty, you're fucked. So
yeah,
pay us the extra money so you can have Call of Duty. And at least compete a little bit. I know you guys are still behind PlayStation, but if you want to stay in the competition, you got to have us on the console, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think Bobby knew that for sure.
I think about all the people who talk about granted, there are rightfully concerns about a monopoly. When I think about Tencent just buying a lot of things up, right? Like we're wary of these big acquisitions for sure. But when people are arguing against these against the Microsoft Activision acquisition, they'll tout monopoly and that's bad for gaming. But honestly, if this is true, what Dan just said, I don't know. Sony buying or kind of strong arming these deals to kind of snuff out its direct competition, that I think is more concerning than I think any kind of acquisition.
And it's insane. And like we saw from the emails, obviously, that Jim Ryan is known to lie, but it's crazy that he is like, he's doing these deals behind everybody's back, and that he has the audacity to come out here and say that Microsoft is the bad guy in this situation, where I'm sure like a month, I get it's business, but I'm like a year maybe out the line, he's going to be trying to acquire like a Square Enix or something. Like he's not going to not try and acquire companies in the future, right?
Hey, bro, hold on, bro. Hold off on these Square Enix acquisition stories.
Sorry.
We've got more down the line.
Jim is just like insane though. Crazy.
Yeah, you think the console gaming is happening on Twitter discourse? No, it's happening. It's happening with the execs all this time. The front lines is the business people.
God.
Anyway, we have to move on. Bethesda executive Pete Hines took the stand, and a number of articles came out here with his deposition. Bethesda's Indiana Jones game is exclusive to Xbox and PC. I think we kind of assumed this, but we finally got confirmation of it. However, it was originally planned. Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. It was also originally planned to release on PS5. For whatever reason, I'm thinking it was a PS5 exclusive. That's not true. I'm not going to read this whole block of text. Essentially, yeah, Indiana Jones going to be exclusive to Xbox and PC. We finally have confirmation of it. Okay. Pete, here's where it gets more interesting, though. Pete Hines says that Starfield would be getting delayed again if it were released on PlayStation. Originally, that was supposed to be a PlayStation exclusive, with Sony bidding to Bethesda for its exclusivity, and that just couldn't happen for Xbox. Like that would be another nail in the coffin, if you want to put it that way. Of they just lost, like Deathloop was one. Ghostwire Tokyo, I guess, could be another. They're losing Final Fantasy. They just couldn't handle any more like huge titles, and so yeah.
It's crazy to think. Crazy to think.
Yeah. Pete was not shy about some of his comments that he made too, which it may get him in trouble.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Are you referring to the email? Because I wrote that right underneath that.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah, I was referring
Okay.
to that, but
So there was an email in February of 2022 after the acquisition where Pete Hines tagged Bethesda bosses Todd Howard and Todd Vaughn, almost coming off as like angry. If you read this, saying, "I'm confused. Is the below not the opposite of we were just asked, told to do with our titles? What's the difference?" Emphasis in bold is mine from the blog post yesterday. I forgot to bold it, but essentially it's the details on the acquisition. With news that some of these that Call of Duty would be on all platforms. However, it was the opposite, that Starfield would be an exclusive title. And so Pete Hines says, "Did anyone at Xbox think about giving us a heads up on this? Todd's going to DICE in a couple weeks. You don't think a journo might find him and press him on why the below is okay for Call of Duty or any Activision Blizzard games, but not the Elder Scrolls 6 or Starfield, or at any/every future interview he does?" And there's there's just cause for that level, that line of thinking. Like, what is the difference, right? And I think the FTC pressed on that. Like, why is it important for Starfield to be exclusive, but not games like Call of Duty? And they discussed this, but it's also why you have Pete Hines kind of walking this back and being like, hey, if Starfield were on PlayStation, it would also be getting this huge delay. It would not be the level of polish that it is now. Were it a multi-platform title. So he's kind of walking those back a little bit by saying like, hey, with Microsoft's help, with this being an exclusive title, we're able to give this a level of care that we wouldn't happen with PlayStation to be a lot farther out.
It's always cool. I mean, the circumstances kind of suck, but this like whole trial is super interesting to see like behind the curtains how like the game dev side kind of talks about their games and how difficult this process can be and how stressful, I guess. But yeah, it is definitely an interesting conversation to have, like you were saying with the Call of Duty versus Starfield discussion. But there definitely is a difference.
And to Pete's credit, like, you're going to these game events and you have no idea which games are going to be exclusive and which ones aren't. Like, if that's not being communicated properly, or like Microsoft's not telling them, hey, this game is exclusive, this one's not, and they're about to have an event where they're going to talk about said game, they should probably give that information to them like ahead of time. So I do understand Pete's frustration with that.
Sarah Bond took the stage next. She got sworn in, and I think just from various people on Twitter saying that like Sarah Bond is supposed to come back later as not a witness, but she'll be taking the stand again for Microsoft. But she got asked to be on the stand for the FTC. They had some questions for her, and I heard she was like great on the stand, being like this actually hurt the FTC more than helped their case. But this is funny that Bond, after getting sworn in, spent some time explaining what Game Pass was to Judge Corley, and then going into the minutia of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. There's some cool stuff here. We do licensing agreements to ensure overall that it's beneficial for both sides. What we found is that it actually generated a lot of discovery of games. Microsoft says that 60% of people who played Human Fall Flat, a puzzle game, had not played that type of game before. 40% of that 60% then went on to purchase a puzzle game in the Microsoft Store. So it's leading to more purchases and engagement with titles that people aren't or wouldn't normally be checking out otherwise. So discoverability for Game Pass, of course, yeah, we know, great. Bond also discusses Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, which includes Xbox Cloud Gaming, xCloud. The FTC argues cloud gaming is a separate market, but Microsoft claims it's just a feature right now. Quote, it's a feature and delivery mechanism. Most of our usage is on console. While Microsoft has bigger cloud gaming ambitions to stream its Xbox games to iOS and Android and reach billions of players through a dedicated Xbox mobile store.
Yeah, which I don't necessarily disagree with her that right now xCloud is mainly, or Xbox Cloud Gaming is mainly a feature. I don't see anyone going out
Yeah.
there exclusively playing Xbox Cloud Gaming like as a platform. I personally, I also see it just as a feature. It's nothing. I wouldn't go out and say, "Oh, I want to go play on my phone, stream this game instead of playing on my TV or something." But yeah, I don't exactly know how that helps the FTC's case or not. Based on it being like a platform versus being a feature, I guess. I guess I'm confused because I feel like xCloud still isn't that big of a player in terms of cloud streaming. Like,
And it's not, but like they're
yeah,
positioning it that it is, right?
right.
You know. So yeah, this did not help the FTC at all. Let's move into day 2. On day 2, Phil Spencer took the stand and he had to talk about competition. Do you view Sony as an aggressive competitor? Asked the FTC. Phil said, Sony is the market leader with a considerable capacity and an aggressive competitor. Every time we ship a game on PlayStation, Sony captures 30% of the revenue that we do on their platform, and then they use that money among other revenue that they have to do things to try to reduce Xbox's survival on the market, says Spencer. We try to compete, but as I said, over the last 20 years, we've failed to do that effectively. The FTC then questioned Phil Spencer about AAA content. It is your view that Microsoft needs a predictable cadence of AAA content for services, asked the FTC. I think our customers need content that they know ship dates. Sorry, I think our customers need content that they know ship dates for to. I copied pasted. So this is from The Verge. So that they invest in our platform, yes, says Spencer. He also agrees that Microsoft needs this type of content to drive acquisition of users for Xbox.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Well, just talking about Phil in general, I was listening to day 2 via some illegal streams apparently.
Not illegal. No, they were
Yeah.
totally legal.
Totally legal, yeah. Well, it's not illegal for me because I didn't stream it. Yeah, I didn't.
You were just listening.
I was just listening. Yeah. Which I want to say, I started on a PlayStation fanboys stream, which I'm like, they were screaming the whole time, and I could barely hear some of what Phil was saying. And I finally found someone else who was streaming it. He speaks Spanish actually. He had Spanish subtitles, but he was playing the audio. So I was like, thank the Lord, somebody's doing this without screaming, "Oh my God, Phil, you're a liar," and all this. But anyways, Phil Spencer absolutely fucking destroyed the FTC lawyer a few times. Like, he was very like condescending towards the FTC lawyer, which I thought was kind of funny. Yeah, like he was like talking to the FTC lawyer like he was a 2-year-old at some points, and I'm like, this is a side of Phil I've never seen before. It was kind of great in terms of just being funny. But yeah, in terms of Phil's comments, I do think it's interesting because obviously AAA is very important, and I do think that part of what he's saying absolutely is true. Like, they're giving PlayStation money for games that they publish on their platform to go ahead and turn around and make games like Final Fantasy 16 exclusive, or, you know, Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy 7 Remake, whatever. All those games that Sony goes and makes exclusive, which, again, Xbox used to do that when they were in the position of power during the 360 days. They did it with BioShock, Mass Effect, a bunch of third-party first exclusive games. So yeah, it's interesting because the market leader controls where these publishers want to go because they have the market lead. They have the most people on their platform to say, hey, we'll pay you some money to make your game exclusive. Plus you're getting the platform that has the most people on it. So that's a win-win for you.
Yeah, it's just really interesting to see Phil be so honest about it. But like Dan was saying with the FTC guy having to be put in his place, I thought it was really interesting where he had to like explain, and I think there was one point where Phil had to explain what an acquisition was to him, as if like this is like the most basic thing that you should know if you're going to be trying to take down Microsoft. But there was a couple of instances like that where it's like, these guys really don't get the video game thing. So it's
I think
interesting to see how this is going to turn out in the end. If Microsoft will just get it because they just really don't know what they're doing.
I think they were also asking about money too, with what you just referenced, where like, oh, you're paying this much, and it feels like, well,
Not
no,
exactly.
we're saying this is what we're valuing them as, right? Having to explain that was, I think, kind of interesting when they should be the ones aware of
Yeah, that was something
what
that I
this
had.
entails. Yeah,
I feel like I had a question like that like last week about something with somebody buying something. I don't remember what it was, but I was like, wow, they spent this much money. And I think one of you guys had to tell me, it's like, well, it's not exactly like that. It's like,
XQC.
Sorry? XQC, yeah,
XQC?
with Twitch. Yeah. And I was
No,
like,
Kick.
with Kick, right. Yes, yeah, with the deal and all that kind of stuff. It's like, I'm Rashan on a freaking podcast. I go to animation school. Like, I don't know these things because I'm not a financial person, but you, the FTC,
But yeah.
they should know this stuff. Like, yeah, that's not good.
What is it? The Financial Trade Commission? No, that's not right.
Federal.
Federal
I think it's federal. I think it's Federal Trade Commission. Yeah.
Like, I'm learning these things on the podcast. You should know this in the courtroom. You know,
Yes.
That's not good. Not good.
We've already talked about PS5 dev kits being withheld for Minecraft. We've already talked about Starfield's exclusivity or potential exclusivity for PlayStation. We didn't talk about Spencer saying Rivals. I mean, kind of Dan talked about it now. That Sony essentially is in the position to have way more exclusive games, and I mean, that's just fact at this point. The FTC is worried about Microsoft making ABK games exclusive, but Xbox chief Phil Spencer says that competitors have a much larger collection of exclusives right now. And that's true. Sony has a significant catalog of exclusive games. It's drastically larger, dramatically larger than what we have on Xbox today. Both Sony and Nintendo's first party is stronger than Xbox, and just to outright even admit that is crazy. He also argues exclusives are just a normal part of the gaming business now, which is also what Dan was just kind of getting at just a bit earlier. It is an established part of the console business, and Sony and Nintendo are very strong with their exclusive games. Sony also has an exclusive marketing deal for Final Fantasy 16, says Spencer, and we have more on Square Enix a bit later. But yeah, it's exactly what Dan was saying with market leaders. Like when you are the market leader, you're in a position to bid on games, to do deals where you are doing these first party partnerships to have way more exclusive games. And yeah, that does lead to the guys in second or third place just having less, right? And when you've been in bronze in third place for so long, like you can only do so much to kind of recuperate that cost and try to bolster, I guess, your own library, and hence why this whole acquisition is kind of going or trying to go through, is that Microsoft needs games essentially.
I think it also bears to mention that, of course, Square Enix is a Japanese company, and Sony and Nintendo are both Japanese companies. Obviously, those companies tend to gravitate to one another a lot more because their products perform better on PlayStation in those territories or on Nintendo in those territories. So, yeah, it's a difficult climb there for Xbox.
Well, here we'll just shift into day 3 now, and we'll have to move here to the second point here. Microsoft was considering acquiring Bungie again, I guess, and Sega to bolster Xbox Game Pass, but also to kind of bolster their presence in Japan with Sega's kind of game base. Microsoft was looking at acquiring both Bungie and Sega, according to internal documents. We believe that Sega has built a well-balanced portfolio of games across segments with global geographic appeal and will help us accelerate Xbox Game Pass both on and off console, said Spencer in November 2020 in a November 2020 email. Microsoft believed a Sega acquisition would drive Xbox Game Pass subscriptions across PC, console, and cloud. The global appeal of Sega's beloved IP will help expand Game Pass's reach to new audiences around the world, most notably in Asia, where localized content is critical to success, said Spencer in his pitch to Nadella and Hood at the time. Sega would also offer game transactions value for monetization opportunities in the future. And yeah, like Dan was just saying, Sony and Nintendo, Japanese companies, they have way more of a market dominance in those Asian markets. Xbox has struggled in those markets historically. having a partnership with, not Bungie, but with Sega specifically would would go a long way to bolster their presence in those markets. And so, not surprising that they at least were thinking about ways that could make them stronger, specifically in Asia.
Yeah. I think we're starting to see them trying to make, obviously this was one of those efforts, but like their last Xbox showcase, like for Summer Games Fest, they had a lot of that Persona and Yakuza there as well. And those are both Sega titles. Well, they're published titles. They don't develop those games, but like Atlas and RGG, I think, are part of the Sega umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be cool to see if they do commit to that and go the extra mile and actually acquire Sega, because I think they're starting to plant those seeds right now. I know I came out a little bit later that Persona is going to be on Switch and it's going to be on PlayStation, but the fact that Persona 3 is going to be a Game Pass game is like that's pretty big. A lot of people in those Asian markets are probably going to try Persona on the Xbox instead of purchasing it outright on Switch or PlayStation. So I think the seeds are there. So maybe they do get that Japan foothold in the future, which would be kind of cool.
The problem is they have to own the platform.
Right, yeah.
A lot of them don't own Xboxes. That's
true.
That's true. It's sad seeing some of the reports from like Japan for how many Xbox consoles sell. There's like, I think hundreds, literally hundreds.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's just not. Yeah.
They do the whole ecosystem thing with the PC Game Pass thing. Sure, almost everybody has like a laptop, so
that's true.
Yeah.
I don't know. The interesting thing about Bungie to me is they did say that they considered acquiring them, although they did put a caveat in there. They said Microsoft did cite a specific risk regarding Bungie, its high burn rate. And of course, they're saying burn rate refers to cash, with Bungie burning through a ton of it in order to maintain Destiny 2 as a live service, as well as their other projects. So, very interesting. I'm sure Phil would have loved to buy Bungie because he loves Destiny. He loves Bungie's legacy as a studio, but I'm wondering if maybe someone higher up was like, "Nah, Phil, we ain't buying them. They're running through too much cash."
Not right now, Phil.
Yeah.
Speaking of buying, a Microsoft exec was ready to go spend Sony out of business to strengthen Xbox. That's a direct quote from an email. Microsoft's Xbox Game Studios chief Matt Booty was encouraging Xbox CFO Tim Stewart to spend big money on acquiring game content in 2019 to set the company up to battle Sony in subscriptions. The revelation comes in an email thread that's part of the hearing. We, Microsoft, are in a very unique position to be able to go spend Sony out of business, said Booty in a December 2019 email, referencing spending $2 billion or $3 billion in 2020 to avoid competitors getting ahead in content at a later date. Quote, it is practically impossible for anyone to start a new video streaming service at scale at this point, said Booty, referencing competitors like Google, Amazon, and Sony. Booty described content as a moat and that only Sony could really compete with Xbox Game Pass. In games, Google is 3 to 4 years away from being able to have a studio up and running. Amazon has shown no ability to execute on game content. Content is the one moat that we have in terms of a catalog that runs on current devices and capability to create new ones. Sony is really the only other player who could compete with Game Pass, and we have a 2-year and 10 million sub lead. Microsoft argues that the email is old and that it never pursued such strategy anyway. This email is 3.5 years old and predates the announcement of our acquisition by 25 months, said David Cuddy, general manager of public affairs at Microsoft, in a statement to The Verge. It refers to industry trends we never pursued and is unrelated to the acquisition. But still, I'll stop here. Dan, what were your thoughts on this? Because I know you shared this on the PXN chat.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most damning pieces in my eyes because of what Matt Booty's saying. I get what they're saying, that it was, 2+ years before the acquisition, but that doesn't mean that the two are unrelated, because like that's still in your head that you're thinking, oh, we can outspend Sony, so we're gonna go out and acquire a $69 billion publisher of one of the biggest games out there. Like I don't think it's entirely. I think both sides could be true. Like I don't think it's entirely absurd to say that them going out and buying Activision would be fulfilling exactly what Matt Booty's saying here, but I also don't necessarily think that them doing it is indicative of them following that strategy, if that makes sense. Like
No, I'm with you. When I read this, like it can read as maybe arrogant, but
Yeah.
to me, I think the hidden meaning is more implicit, saying like, hey, we have the means to be a competitor and an aggressive one at that. So like we should be doing like some more aggressive strategies in order to compete with the likes of Sony. And I don't think Matt Booty was really trying to say like, hey, we can just spend a bunch of cash and be the only console on the market. I don't think that's what he was kind of getting at all. Just kind of trying to get more big heads at Xbox to be a bit more aggressive in kind of positioning themselves to come back as a strong competitor in the space. I think is the way I read it.
Yeah, after we talked about that, I don't feel like it's as damning now. But like, will the judge think that? I don't know.
Yeah,
Like
that's the
Exactly.
other thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
How's FTC going to spin it on
Mhm.
for their benefit? Yeah.
And then Jim Ryan was not there. He was too busy in Japan getting scanned into Kojima Studios.
Oh,
But he
no.
did do a pre-recorded video deposition that lasted, I think, like a full day or two, over the course of 2 days, that they then condensed over an hour and like 15-20 minutes and played for those in court. So there's some the bunch of notes from the video deposition. PlayStation chief Jim Ryan is asked why Xbox games resonate better with customers in the US than outside the country. And this is a very stupid answer. Many other games involve an element of shooting and online multiplayer, both of which typically are more popular in the US than they are outside the US. I mean,
People in the
maybe,
US like shooting people, and especially people that they know are real.
maybe in like, I would say maybe in like the 360 era, maybe when like, yeah, Xbox did have it, like that was like, but that was like the current zeitgeist of that time. Like multiplayer was like just starting to get huge, and a lot of the online games were a lot of shooters. Like maybe then, but now I think people are, yes, they like their shooters, but they also like to dabble in other games. Case in point, like a lot of other titles like RPGs, linear games like Spider-Man, whatever, God of War, like those games are not shooters, but they're selling very, very well. So I don't know if that argument holds a lot of water.
Yeah, it was a weird one. Definitely grasping there, I feel like, or reaching.
One thing I forgot about, did we talk about Indiana Jones?
We did.
Yeah,
Okay.
we earlier.
I
Did you guys want to
forgot-
say? Yeah, go bring it in.
I forgot about Phil's whole comparison for Indiana Jones, because he was saying, well, Sony's got Marvel Spider-Man. We need something to
Right.
compete with that. And like Indiana Jones is another Disney property, ironic enough, that he feels like is an outside gaming property that could compete with something like Marvel Spider-Man.
There's two extra things there. One is an argument against, one is an argument for. The argument against is that Disney did approach Microsoft first for the Spider-Man game, and they declined, which is then why they ended up at Sony. They went to Insomniac. That's one thing. The other thing, I think, was the argument being made in court. I forget from who at that point. I think it may have been Pete. I'm not sure. But them saying, like, because of this acquisition, we're in a position to make this game that is better suited to appease Disney. Whereas if it were multi-platform and we didn't have the support of Microsoft, like it would be a much tougher game to try and create, I think was the gist of the argument there, which is understandable.
True.
Moving on. The FTC and Microsoft have been battling over whether the Nintendo Switch is a game console and whether it competes with the PlayStation and Xbox. Jim Ryan says, we consider Nintendo to participate in a different market segment to Xbox and PlayStation, which is interesting. And in fact, I would almost say that's wrong, right? Like, Tears of the Kingdom just came out. Is a huge game. It's the best-selling game of the month, of last month, I guess. Or anyway, of the past 30 days. And Switch continues to sell tons of consoles, right? However, Jim Ryan says that Nintendo's hardware technology is much less sophisticated in nature to PlayStation or Xbox. Its hardware typically retails for a cheaper price, and its audience is aimed rather younger, which is somewhat fair. But also, he expanded, I don't think I wrote this down in here, but he also expanded essentially that there's an element of crossover where, like, there's a certain percentage of Switch owners that are, of PlayStation owners that are also Switch owners. So it's not really a concern if they're playing both games anyway, since they already have them.
Yeah. I think I kind of agree, like, that Nintendo is like if you can't afford all three, Nintendo's the second one that you get. If you get a PlayStation or an Xbox and a Nintendo, if you can't get all three, I feel like that's me. Like, I have a PlayStation and a Nintendo, and I don't really feel like I need to get an Xbox because I got Game Pass on PC. But I feel like, I guess even in that same breath, that's even more reason to put them into the equation. Like, now you're competing with two consoles.
Yeah.
As opposed, yeah, that's an interesting way to think of it. He's definitely right about it being less sophisticated, but I think Nintendo is definitely making. I don't think we didn't have it in the news, but there's been talks about their next consoles coming up, and they definitely seem to be taking hints from PlayStation and Xbox's patterns with, like, bringing stuff over. So they may be a competition fairly soon. If they don't take them seriously now, they definitely will be in the future, I think.
Maybe not completely direct in terms of sophistication, because I think what Ro, you were saying is that the hardware is supposed to be akin to a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One. But it does mean that there is going to be a lot more opportunities for, like, third-party games that are still launching on the newest generation of consoles, maybe to have a Switch port a lot easier than they do now. So it could be. Sorry, Dan, I interrupted.
No, you're good. Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I don't completely disagree with what Jim said. Like Ro said, like, you typically the average gamer is going to pick up a PS5 or an Xbox Series S or X and a Switch if they're going to do both, or if they're going to do two, I should say. They're going to pick up one of those combos rather than pick up an Xbox and a PlayStation. But the thing is like, I feel like that argument in of itself, like Ro was kind of alluding to, that would be evidence enough to say, okay, well, us as Xbox, why are people not buying a Switch? Like, why are people not buying an Xbox and a PlayStation, or an Xbox and a Switch? Like, I don't see that as big of an argument for the FTC's favor in terms of what Jim Ryan was saying because of that. Also, I thought it was fascinating because multiple times the FTC lawyer tried to pigeonhole it, where they kept asking, is the Nintendo Switch a Gen 9 system? Like, they kept pushing down this thing. Is it a Gen 9 system? It's like, well, no, but, like, is the next Nintendo system a Gen 9 system? Like, Nintendo does things on their own accord. So, like, I do agree with Phil in that regard, because Phil was talking about a current gen platform rather than the generation that we're on, like 9th gen. And I agree with them in that regard. You go to a store, what consoles are there? That's your options. That's your competition. Like, Gen 9 means nothing to the average consumer or people that don't really know about what's going on. And hell, we don't even know. Like, is Nintendo Switch a Gen 9 system? I don't know.
Right. All good points, but I have to move on, Dan.
Yes.
There's still a lot more to disseminate through.
Yes.
Moving on with Jim Ryan's deposition. The FTC has been arguing that exclusives are bad for competition, and that Microsoft purchased Bethesda and kept games like Redfall, Starfield, and the upcoming Indiana Jones off PS5. Ryan expected these games to remain on PlayStation. I think that pretty much every Bethesda game was multi-platform prior to the acquisition. However, I mean, come on, like what an easy argument to argue against, and like you have like evidence that you are going to other studios and making bids to have exclusive games
For Starfield.
on the PlayStation, and it literally happened for Starfield. Yeah, exactly. So it's double-edged sword on that one, I guess. In tandem with that, Xbox chief Phil Spencer sent Jim Ryan a commitment list of games last year that would remain on PlayStation after the proposed acquisition deal closes. The list included Overwatch, but not Overwatch 2. Other Activision games on PlayStation must be sufficiently broad to fully align with gamers' expectations, said Ryan in the email. He calls it not a meaningful list in his deposition. So, a little bit of, I don't know, Jim Ryan kind of taking a jab at Microsoft, being like, hey, sure, you're making the commitment now that you're going to put games on there, but it's not the games that are coming, not the newest versions of those games, and not any newer ones coming out afterwards. So there's a little bit of hesitation there from Jim, supposedly. And then Jim Ryan asked if there's anything wrong in Microsoft doing exclusives like Redfall. He says, I don't like it, but fundamentally have no quarrel with it. What about Starfield? I don't like it, but I don't view it as anti-competitive.
Interesting.
Yeah. The FTC's whole argument about Microsoft benefiting so much by cloud by this acquisition, it seems like cloud, as we'll discover here in a little bit, is their main focus, but like exclusives are what they're ultimately wanting in the mobile play. Like, yeah,
that's true. I think speaking of mobile, I think this is where it comes in. Maybe not. Jim Ryan confirms he told Activision he wanted the deal blocked. Microsoft's lawyers bring up Jim Ryan meeting with Bobby Kotick on the same day as the European Commission on February 21st. We'd previously heard Ryan had said to Kotick, I don't want a new Call of Duty deal. I just want to block your merger. Jim Ryan confirms the meeting and what he said. I told Bobby that I thought the transaction was anti-competitive. I hope that the regulators would do their job and block it. Ryan said Kotick wanted to cover himself with an extended Call of Duty deal with Sony. What Bobby wanted to do was cover himself by extending the marketing collaboration between Sony and Activision in the event of the transaction not proceeding.
Good old Bobby going behind the scenes to get whatever he can.
Actually, I have to bring in Bobby for this next bit too. I'm going to throw this in. Jim Ryan says that publishers don't like Game Pass. Jim Ryan, speaking to those Fidelity investors, said publishers don't like Xbox Game Pass. I've talked to all publishers. They unanimously do not like Game Pass because it's value destructive. I think I have an issue with the word all publishers. Yes. I think that's something you need to qualify. He defends the comments, saying it's a very commonly held view by publishers. Which one's, Jim? Microsoft lawyer, so you had no reason to think Mr. Kotick would put Call of Duty on Game Pass if this transaction was not completed. Ryan, correct. Ryan also said to investors he was expecting more than 25 million Xbox Game Pass subscribers and that Sony's 50 million PlayStation Plus subscribers during their investor meeting. I didn't put this in there, but Bobby also came out today saying that he doesn't like Game Pass. He doesn't like the idea of a new Call of Duty game launching day and date with Xbox Game Pass, and he was kind of almost sort of in a way kind of agreeing with the sentiment of Jim Ryan, to which I will also add there is just cause in kind of thinking and criticizing about the motivations for Bobby to say something like this in court, if he actually believes it or not, right? Like even if he doesn't believe, or sorry, even if he, what I'm trying to say is, if he talks down Game Pass in a way, he's in that position to kind of hurt the FTC's argument and make that deal go through, which again would make him a lot of money anyway. So
if Call of Duty isn't on Game Pass, I kind of like argue what's the point of this whole thing, right? Like what are they going to do with Activision if not have their games on Game Pass? I guess Call of Duty is one game and they have other stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like that's a big thing not to have happen in the future. Even if it's not new games. Could be the old ones, right?
I think the problem is Call of Duty is such a juggernaut. I'm not sure if I don't know if I see the world that Call of Duty comes to Game Pass because of that reason. Like it's literally the biggest game every year.
You'd be throwing money out, right?
Right, exactly.
Mm.
And that's not to say old Call of Duty games can't go to Game Pass, but
Right.
yeah, I think I'd be hard pressed to see day and date launches for Call of Duty on Game Pass for that reason, like you Christian's saying as well.
We'll move on to day 4. There's 2 stories here that I wrote. Well, one thoroughly and one that I didn't write, but I remember enough to talk about it. Microsoft wanted to acquire Square Enix as part of a plan for mobile Game Pass, and this goes against a lot of speculation in the Twitter games industry, where people were wanting Sony or expecting Sony to acquire Square Enix in the near future with a lot of exclusive deals. As part of its big wave of acquisitions, Microsoft considered adding Square Enix, the publisher behind the Final Fantasy series, to its Xbox portfolio. The news comes from internal documents released as part of the FTC versus Microsoft hearing, which previously had considered other big names like Sega and Bungie. According to the documents, Microsoft had a number of reasons for being interested in Square. Part of it was being able to bolster Xbox's historically scant presence in Asian markets. Already talked about that as well. There was another obvious reason to add more content to drive growth of the Xbox Game Pass through new blockbuster Square Enix releases, as well as the company's extensive back catalog. And yeah, I think that's key as well. The back catalog would be massive. A more surprising reason for the potential acquisition, however, was to gain a step up in mobile, which could help future mobile exclusive Game Pass offerings. Currently, Game Pass supports Xbox and PC, but it looks like Microsoft has had some broader plans in the past. Combining Square Enix's robust mobile native portfolio with our own could potentially help us create a mobile native Xbox Game Pass SKU. The document reads, adding that the publisher's games, which include ports of classic games sold at a premium, would have substantial value for a subscription service. And yes, I think I agree. This would make the most sense for acquiring Square Enix, is having that huge title of mobile games ready for Game Pass would drive up significant numbers, specifically in the Asian market as well. And yeah, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Will it happen though?
Yeah. Will it happen though? I think I can imagine Sony picking them up before Xbox does. I think Square Enix may prefer that deal. But this would be another huge get for like what we were talking about with Sega, where it would just help platform them better in the Asian markets and help them compete a little bit better.
Yeah. You guys don't think so? It says Microsoft wanted to acquire Square Enix. You don't think that? So Square Enix, of course, got rid of multiple studios not that long ago for seemingly not that much money, and like even at the time, I think I speculated. I can't remember who all speculated that they were kind of lightening their load for Sony to be able to afford them, because obviously Sony's not as big of a corporation as Microsoft. So if they're jettisoning some studios, they're obviously lowering the amount that they're worth for Sony to possibly acquire them. Like, do you guys think that that's a possibility, that they had the conversation with Sony about possible acquisition?
Yeah. I think money talks, but I think only to a certain amount. I think, like Ro mentioned, partnerships I think have a stronger leverage in these, and especially like decades long partnerships.
Yeah.
Or you've seen time and again in recent years, kind of Square almost burning is a strong word, but it's the only one that's coming to mind. Like kind of burning relationships with Xbox just to keep having more deals with Sony, and that would make sense, right? Like if you're gonna align with anyone, it makes more sense to go with someone like Sony when you have like a long lineage of history with them. So yeah, if that's a smart take to read into the jettison of studios in order to have like a lower value to then be more easily acquired. That would make a lot of sense. Well, I mean, will it happen though? Is my answer, but I don't know. As this whole topic of the show has kind of told us, Jim Ryan seems like he's a pretty aggressive guy in terms of making Sony even stronger and kind of burning Xbox right back any avenue he can. So it's not outside the realm of possibility, probably.
Which is scary in of itself, right? Because like if we get to the point where Sony continues to grow and grow and grow and be the clear market leader, that's lowering competition, and Microsoft has not been shy from, jettisoning things that don't make them a ton of money. Mixer, they weren't afraid to get rid of that, a year after paying all these top streamers a shitload of money to come to their platform. Like, it's interesting. Like, I'd really like to keep the competitive nature of the industry, because I think a clear market leader is not good for gaming as a whole. Yeah. The other thing about the acquisitions, like their leaked documents, I think literally almost every fucking independent video game developer out there right now, and even some that aren't independent that are owned up by other publishers, were listed as possible acquisition targets for Microsoft, which I'm like, holy shit, that's a lot of studios on one page.
Yeah, I mean, at surface level, it seems like maybe it's a bit aggressive from, back to that notion of monopolizing the industry. But again, like, I think the whole argument that we've been making today is that, or even, I guess, even that Phil has been making in the past couple of days of these hearings, is that they're only doing this for survivability. Because if they didn't, they'd be getting eaten up by Sony just acquiring and making all these deals, to the point where like they just would not be able to compete in the space at all. And I think, I don't know. I think at the heart of what you were saying, Dan, is like competition is what drives, I think, more interesting games, more interesting experiences, and honestly just survivability of the industry at large anyway.
And Phil's comments about his targets that he was supposed to be hitting internally from his boss, Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, he was not hitting those metrics. Like he was visibly shaken when he had to answer that question about, like, no, Xbox isn't hitting the metrics it should be hitting right now. Like, I've never heard Phil like in that capacity, other than like that kind of funny interview about Redfall. But yeah, it's interesting.
Last news item that I have today is that Sony submitted a couple documents that were unfortunately not redacted very well. They were redacted with, I believe, a black Sharpie, which when scanned in makes it so that you can still kind of read the what was supposed to be redacted anyway. And then the FTC like deleted tons of documents that they just went through and just deleted all of them, just so that people don't have access to those, because you don't know what's actually redacted and what's not. What we learned today is that games like The Last of Us Part 2 and Horizon Forbidden West had budgets of over $200 million. Forbidden West was $212 million, and Last of Us Part 2 was $220 million, which is an kind of an absurd amount of money to think about. Like, games did not used to cost this much to make. For these two first parties, Sony studios, to cost this much is insane. I went through and I looked up like comparisons for what like huge movies cost to make. By the way, most high budget movies cost somewhere in the realm of like 150, and that's pushing it. That's a lot of the high budget movies. 150 games. This game 220. Avatar: The Way of Water, one of like the most visually impressive movies ever made. You know what the budget for that was? 250. Just a bit more expensive than The Last of Us Part 2. Like, this is the caliber that Sony is investing in these games, and no wonder the games look the way they do. I guess, or run the way they do, is like they're pouring a lot of money into these. Just indicative of the whole games industry. I wonder how much other games, smaller titles, or Ghost of Tsushima 2. How much is that game getting? Probably in the realm of hundreds of millions, or maybe like 150. Who knows?
And that's another thing indicative of our industry, of like we need to have more standards for like tools and tool sets, because I feel like part of that is how long it takes for developers to make games nowadays, and there's so many developers working on said games. So if you have a 5-year game, for instance, Horizon Forbidden West, I think they said took 5 years to develop, and you've got 200 plus employees times 5 years. That's a lot of money, a lot of time. So like, I don't know. I feel like the industry as a whole could do a lot better in terms of like, I don't know, standardizing a lot of this,
Support indie games. That's my answer.
Yeah.
That's it. That is most of the information that's come out of the courtroom so far. I'm sure there's going to be plenty more to cover next week. Yeah. No final thoughts, I think, for me yet, because there's still so much information. But like, it is impressive the amount of news and insight we're getting in through this court trial. Like, this is like literally inside baseball for the games industry of like what the two biggest companies. No shade at Nintendo. I know Microsoft says they're in third place, but like when we think of the console wars, we think of Microsoft versus Sony, right? And so like to be reading into what goes on behind the scenes for each company trying to one up the other or keep market lead or.
Don't say it. Don't say it, Christian. The FTC is gonna grab our video and put it on the next slideshow at the.
You're right. You're right. You're right. Yeah. I plead the fifth. Thank you, Dan. You're right. So smart.
I'd love to see Nintendo in these courtrooms, though. I'd love to see like Doug Bowser give a little.
I think tomorrow there is somebody from Nintendo, not Doug Bowser, but I think the SVP of Nintendo is supposed to testify tomorrow. I think it was video deposition as well. So
I just think about like the Nintendo Directs and how weird they can be.
Yeah.
Like if they were in a situation like this, what kind of tidbits and lore drops will they drop in a courtroom situation? Like, how funny can Nintendo be here?
Do you believe in the console wars? I don't know, but check out look at this silly Mario game.
Everybody 1-2 Switch is coming out on Friday.
Oh my god.
I just wonder which way it's going to go, because before this thing, I thought that there's no chance of it being approved by getting through the court process in the US. And then they started the first few days and I'm like, what the fuck is the FTC doing? Like, they have no idea what they're doing. And then they had some solid arguments, and now I'm just like, I don't know what's going to happen.
I think the main reason they're doing it too is so that they have enough time to go through all the documents. I think is one of the reasons why they're doing this. Is like it's too soon, but it's also not too soon because Microsoft has a deadline with Activision of middle of July. So it's like,
and tomorrow is the last day of the closing arguments are tomorrow. So I think they said it'll take days before we know the result, but maybe
that's crazy
next week. Yeah.
Wow. It's finally coming to an end.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Hopefully.
But until then.
Wait.
Thank you again. Oh, yeah.
Sorry. That just reminded me. Bobby Kotick did say if this doesn't go through, like if this court process, because this court process is not determining whether they're allowed to do it or not. This is just determining if they need to have a further battle down the road. Bobby Kotick has already said that. Bobby Kotick has already said that if this isn't like approved at this point after this is over, that Activision is pulling out of the deal. So this is a very interesting and important time, because if
it doesn't go through, it really is over.
Correct.
It's so Jover.
Oh,
Jesus.
Bobby.
And on that note, thank you again to everyone joining us live on YouTube, Twitch, as well as podcast services everywhere, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you get your pods. Thank you, Roshan. I've been Christian. Gage, don't hurt yourself at work. Thank you, Daniel. And this has been Podcast PXN, and we are out of here today.
Much love, and keep on gaming.
See ya.
Hold on. Don't stop recording yet.
I was going to do that if you weren't going to.
Yeah.